Hello and welcome to the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast for November 10th, 2024. This is episode 319. Stand-up comedian, actor, improviser, and dreamer, Paul Green, coming to you, sharing my journey, my thoughts and insights on pursuing my dreams in the hopes that you might be pursuing yours. Oh my gosh, it has been quite a day. Today started out with me heading up to help the sketch comedy group that I will be performing with this weekend move all of the props and set pieces from our rehearsal space, which is a dude's living room, into the theater where we will be performing. And it is just really shocking how much work and effort goes into just putting on any sort of show, any sort of production. Just how many details that need to be accounted for. And it's just a miracle that anybody produces anything. I mean, set pieces, renting venues, advertising, props, writing scripts, getting actors, rehearsing, costuming, makeup. Oh my gosh. It just really is so much. And for this production, it's just a small little community theater. Nobody's going to make any money. I think there's like 50 seats in the theater. We're in a much bigger theater. It's like the Scottsdale desert stages, but they have multiple stages, and we're kind of in the small room. But I've been rehearsing and working with this troupe now for, almost 3 months. It's been so much work to just put on 3 shows this weekend. And, I love the sketches. I love doing it, but, it just really is just so much. And, yeah, I don't really have any insight or thoughts on that. I'm just kind of expressing I was just thinking about that today, of how much work goes into things that we don't even see or recognize or appreciate. I was talking to a buddy of mine about this, of like how many millions and millions of dollars, thousands and thousands, if not tens of thousands of man hours, script writing, trying to get it greenlit, trying to get financing, all to make a movie that at the end of the day, somebody is going to like watch for like 10 seconds and be like, this sucks. And just completely ignore it. I mean, think of the worst movie you've ever seen on, TV or, in a movie theater. And even to make a sucky movie, it's just an insurmountable amount of work and effort and decision-making and manpower. Getting people to finance a movie, I mean, that to me just blows my mind, of these directors or these, movie producers or screenwriters or whatever, who have an idea, and then, they've got to go convince somebody to give them millions and millions and millions of dollars to make a movie that nobody actually really knows if it'll be successful or not. And then after they make it, they have to spend millions and millions of dollars to get it distributed, to get it marketed, to get the promotions out. And, then we just go watch it and go, yeah, that movie sucked. Next. It's just interesting. I don't know. It's just interesting to me. I know I'm just kind of rambling about this. I don't really have a point to make other than that just fascinates me. Um, the amount of work that it takes just to get things off the table, and just because you got something off the table doesn't mean it's going to be, it's a success or, financially viable. And, it begs the question of, is it worth it? Is it worth it to go through all of that work and effort just to have the risk, just to have the opportunity for it to be successful? And the flip side of that is the risk that it flops and that it isn't successful and the investors don't make their money back. And they don't make their money back, then guess what? You ain't ever convincing anybody to give you money again. Although that's probably not true. I mean, there's plenty of charismatic fraudsters out there who just kind of seem to have the ability to convince people to just keep giving them money and money and money and money. But I don't know. Just some random thoughts that I was having today. But I suspect it's the same idea if you're out there pursuing a dream, right? Like, you have a dream, you want to have success at something, or you want some sort of expansion or something better happening in your life. Otherwise, why go for a dream, right? If it isn't a dream with the anticipation or hope that it's going to warrant some sort of result that creates an experience or a lifestyle that you didn't have before. And there is no guarantee that going for it, quote unquote, is going to yield those results. I mean, I experience that all the time in Hollywood. All of these, hopeful actors and actresses and models and comedians coming out to LA in the hopes that they will be able to, make a living, at least. Like, making a living is kind of the minimum hope that they'll be able to, be successful as an actor and as a performer. And probably the real hope is that they'll get rich and famous. They'll come out, they'll get a big break, they'll get some massive exposure. And, next thing you know, they're the next whatever. And I was only in LA for 7 years, but within that time frame, I saw so many people who moved out after me, like moved out to LA after me and already had gone back home, within a couple of years. It's like they gave it like 2 years. I remember just this one woman that I met out there, and met her through a friend, and she had been out there like 2 years and she was already moving back home. I'm like, wait, why are you already moving back home? She's like, I just didn't, I just wasn't really able to make a living at this. I was going like, you're 2 years in? And what did you expect? That you were going to come out and, book a role immediately and be making $10,000 a week, So it begs the question, and it's a question I don't really have an answer for, but, what is your dream and how long are you willing to pursue it? And what are you willing to sacrifice in the pursuit of that dream, and for how long? And when do you know to either pull the plug, or when do you know, like, oh, this is just a lull, or this is just a setback and I need to surge forward and work harder and try harder and, keep going. And I do not have an answer for that for anybody. I know for me, and trust me, I have contemplated quitting multiple times throughout my life. When I moved out to LA, I mean, there were times when I was just so discouraged. I was so down and out. Just wondering, what the heck am I doing here? There isn't a chance in heck that I am going to get snatched up here, that I'm going to somehow have some miraculous meteoric rise to the top to a degree that, you know, I'm actually making, again, at least making a living, if not a comfortable living, in this space. And even now, sometimes, those thoughts will creep in and I'll go like, oh my gosh, I'm already 43. It hasn't happened yet. I'm still in this kind of grind phase, or what feels like a grind phase. I'm starting another comedy brand, trying to grow that from the ground up. It's like almost no social media subscribers. We're kind of going gig by gig by gig and, trying to make it, be successful. I'm getting some private gigs here. I have some, good relationships with a couple comedy club owners who, book me on a regular basis, which is awesome. And I'm trying to grow my own brand and my own social media and blah, 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 blah. And I do have to acknowledge that there is a chance that even with all this work, even with all this sacrifice, even with all this intention, that, there may come a time when I finally get my movie in theaters and then people go, yeah, I don't want to watch that. And I think the reality is, though, that if that eminent, or not eminent, if failure, like legitimate failure, was not a possibility, then it's not really a risk to go for it. I think maybe there's this thought process of like, oh, why is everything so much work, or why is everything such a risk? How come just everybody doesn't automatically have everything they want and just automatically get put in the exact desirable situation that they want? How come so many people have to struggle and go through hardship? And, even people who do get success, barring, like a lottery winner, but, most of them end up bankrupt anyway. But I'm talking about, people who were able to build, a successful anything. It's like successful career, successful business, whatever it may be. The reality is we look at them after the success and go like, oh yeah, well, of course. But while they were building it, they had no idea. I'm sure they had hope, they had ambition, they had dreams and goals. Just the difference is they happen to get theirs. You're Bill Gates and you're Steve Jobs, and we can kind of go down that list, but even beyond the hyper successful, because I don't necessarily think they're comparable. I mean, if your dream is to start Amazon part 2, if your dream is like, oh, I want to create the most powerful e-commerce website in the history of the world, well, good luck with that. But on a smaller scale, like all of us just going for our own individual dreams, acknowledging that like there is a legitimate risk and there is a legitimate chance for failure, I really think is one of the many elements that makes it so exciting and so challenging, of course. But the alternative, is to take perhaps a more safe, conservative path, or at least that provides the illusion of safety. And then you have to live the rest of your life never really knowing if maybe you could have gotten that dream. It's a very fascinating, friction of life choices, I guess. And I still remember my first stand-up comedy teacher talking to me, and I was a student in his class, and he was the first person to really sit me down and say, hey, you should be in LA or you should be in New York pursuing comedy. You should not be here in Arizona. And I remember talking to him once, and he says, Paul, I moved to Hollywood when I was young. I was the next upcoming comic. I was the next hot actor coming up. I was getting auditions. I was having a lot of success in LA. But he was also had some vices and some addictions that were, challenging. And he tells me that ultimately he missed out on a couple of huge roles because of his addiction. At least that's what he blames it on. And then eventually, he moved away from LA and has, taken his own path from there. And so he tells me this story and he goes, but you want to know what, Paul? Sure. I moved out to Hollywood. I gave it a shot. I may have blown my chance, because of my, vices or whatever. But then he looked me dead in the eyes and he goes, but at least I effing tried. At least I effing tried. And I remember him telling me that and me getting chills, and I still get chills to this day whenever I think about that. Because something hit me in that moment, which was, I could it would be so easy for me not to move to LA and just to stay where I am, keep doing what I'm doing. I was very happy here in Phoenix. All my friends and family were here. I had a community. I had a job. I had all of these things. And moving to LA and trying to pursue comedy was terrifying to me. And I truthfully didn't have much of a ambitious, I'm going to be a guy who goes and makes it. I didn't really have that sort of self-belief. Definitely not at that point in my life. But I had this realization that, when I'm 80 and I'm looking back on my life, what would I rather say to myself? That, well, I didn't move to LA because of XYZ, whatever the excuses are, whatever the justifications, that I was giving myself before. I didn't move to LA because it's too expensive. Oh, it's too hard because, I didn't really think I would make it and blah, 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 blah. Or would I rather be, 80, looking back on my life and assuming I didn't make it anyway? Would I still rather be able to say, well, at least I effing tried. I actually went for it as best as I could, and then the outcome was whatever the outcome was and is. And here's the other thing that I think so few people ever actually take time to actually consider, which is, or what if it actually works out great? How's that for a novel idea? What if things actually go well? What if they go better than expected? And you never will know if you don't effing try. So anyway, that's my little tidbit of wisdom for today. At least effing try. Because I think a life of failing to meet your goal after genuine effort is far more interesting and noble and noteworthy than living a life of mediocre success, but you didn't ever really try to go for what it is that you really wanted. Especially if you didn't go for what you wanted because you didn't believe it would work out for you, or out of fear, or, excuses, or, fear disguises reason, I think is what Jim Carrey says. So in my book, everybody, I say go for it. Give it a try. See what happens. And that's what I'm doing. And I don't know. I don't know if my movie's going to be a hit or a flop. I'm using movie metaphorically. Maybe that's not clear. The metaphor of what I was talking about at the top of the podcast, how so many movies take so much work and effort, and then sometimes they end up being a flop. But at least those movie makers effing tried. All right, everybody. I'm going to call it there for today. This is the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast for November 10th, 2024, episode 319. I love you all so much, and go out there and effing try. Talk to you tomorrow.